My neighbor did better than my husband, so I added him to my marriage. My name is Rachel, and at 30, my life looked like a carefully painted picture. But behind the shiny surface, there was a growing restlessness that consumed me. I lived in a charming neighborhood in San Francisco, where vibrantly colored Victorian houses danced to the Pacific breeze. Isaac, my husband, was a talented engineer with a passion for technology. He worked long hours at his startup, always involved in some innovative idea. I remember how he used to tell me about his achievements, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. However, over time, dedication to work began to distance us. Conversations that used to be filled with laughter and dreams became monotonous dialogues about deadlines and projects. I felt alone at home, surrounded by piles of art books and blank canvases, longing for a connection that seemed to have disappeared. It was on one of those sunny spring days that I met Joseph. He moved in next door and soon started playing guitar in his backyard. The music echoed through the air, causing something deep inside me to resonate. It was vibrant and full of life, a sound that seemed to defy all the monotony that surrounded me. The first time I heard it, I was working on a project. The melody made me stop and look out of the window. Joseph was a man of 32, with messy brown hair, and his carefree smile exuded an energy I hadn't seen in a long time. He played as if each note were an intimate conversation with the world, and I was fascinated. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the horizon and brushed the sky with shades of orange and pink, I decided to go outside for a breather. I walked over to the fence that separated our gardens and felt my heart race when I saw him there, sheltered by the soft light of dusk. He smiled when he saw me and closed his eyes, allowing the music to take him away. That image stuck in my mind. "You play beautifully," I said, trying to disguise the desire I felt for him. My tone was casual, but there was an underlying longing in my words. "Thank you. It's a way to relieve stress after a long day," he replied, his voice as soft as the melody he had just played. The way he spoke, with a friendly sincerity, made my heart soar. To my surprise, we started talking. He told me about his passion for music and how he had moved to San Francisco with the dream of becoming a well-known musician. His every word seemed to create an invisible bond between us that I didn't know how to avoid. Over the next few days, our interaction intensified. I would go out to say hello, and he would always be there, guitar in hand, ready to welcome me as if we had known each other for years. The music that echoed between our houses became the soundtrack to our conversations. He talked about his dreams, his unpublished compositions, and I shared about my struggle as a designer, the creative ups and downs. It was as if we were filling a void in each other. Inside me, however, a battle was brewing. I knew I was flirting with something risky, something that could jeopardize the love I had built with Isaac. But as the days turned into weeks, the connection with Joseph became hard to ignore. He was what I longed for, vibrant and full of life, while I felt like a shadow of what I used to be. A part of me wondered if this was just a passing fancy, or if there was something deeper hidden beneath the surface. One particularly hot afternoon, I decided to venture out further and visit Joseph's backyard. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky with mixtures of gold and purple. He was sitting on a wooden swing, his guitar in his hands, and a smile formed on his lips when he saw me. "Hey, Rachel, do you want to hear a new song I've written?" he asked, his voice soft and inviting. My heart raced as I approached, feeling anxiety mixed with excitement. I sat down on the swing next to him, a small space that seemed full of electricity. He began to play, and the notes floated through the air, as if they were dancing between us. The music spoke of love and freedom, of living in the moment and letting go. As he played, Joseph's eyes locked onto mine, and I couldn't look away. It was as if the world outside had completely disappeared. I felt a wave of feelings rising up, as if we were creating a universe of our own, away from the worries and monotony of everyday life. He finished the song, and a comfortable silence hung between us. "That was beautiful," I murmured. Although I felt that words weren't enough to express what I really felt, I could feel my heart racing. Deep down, there was an undeniable tension in the air, a feeling that we were on the edge of something. "Can I teach you how to play this part?" he asked, and before I could hesitate, he took my hands and placed them on the guitar strings. His touch was soft but firm, and I felt a connection that transcended the music. As Diego guided me, our bodies were close, and the proximity was electrically charged. I could feel him breathing, and I realized that I was diving into a sea of emotions that I knew I shouldn't be exploring. That afternoon turned into an eternal moment that I would treasure forever. As soon as the sun went down, the sky was covered in stars, and, for a moment, I completely forgot who I was and the husband who was waiting for me at home. My thoughts were muddled, and while Joseph's laughter and music filled the space between us, a part of me wanted more. I wanted to explore this new connection, even though I knew it could ruin everything I had built. In the days that followed, I began to notice the growing anxiety in my chest. I would come home and look at Isaac, trying to remember why I married him. But the memory of Joseph could only manifest itself in whispers and memories. I looked at Isaac, and in his eyes I saw love. But there was also a silent recognition that something had changed. I didn't know how to deal with the guilt that was growing inside me. I tried to convince myself that it was just a passing phase, that the exciting sensations Joseph aroused were just an escape from everyday life, a passing distraction. The days went by, and the intensity of the connection that began to form between Joseph and me only increased. I found myself getting more and more involved in this new reality, even though I knew that the truth was hidden behind a wall of secrets. This was the first part of my story, a combination of desire and uncertainty, of music and color, where each day brought a new note and a new chord on the track of life that I didn't know if I should play. Reluctant to see what was shaping up, I failed to realize that I was heading towards a crossroads, where the choice I made could change everything. After that sunny afternoon when I played the guitar with Joseph, a haze of expectation and excitement hung over me. Despite the guilt that grew like a shadow in my heart, the only constant was the intense connection I felt with him. The music he brought into my life had become an oasis in the midst of the desolation that my routine had become. Joseph wasn't just a neighbor. He became a refuge, the promise of a life full of passion and spontaneity, things I hadn't experienced for a long time in my marriage. One night, while Isaac was working on a project at home, I couldn't resist the temptation and decided that Joseph's music needed to call me again. The sky was covered in stars. The city lights twinkled below, offering an enchanting backdrop that made everything more nestled and exciting. My legs seemed to have a life of their own as I walked towards his house, the path illuminated by the soft light of the lanterns that hung from the bushes. As I entered Joseph's garden, the sound of his guitar enveloped me like a warm hug. He was sitting on a small wooden bench, under the soft light of the old lamp that hung from a tree. The place had a magical air, green leaves and colorful flowers dancing in the light evening breeze. "Hey, Rachel." He looked up, and a smile lit up his face. "You're just in time. I'm working on a new song, and I'd love your opinion." My eyes lit up. "I'd love to hear it," I replied, sitting down next to him, the distance that had once separated us seeming minimal. The atmosphere was charged with a palpable electricity, and the chemistry between us was undeniable. Every chord that came out of his guitar ran through my body like a wave, activating every fiber of my being. He began to play with a delivery that fascinated me, his hands dancing agilely over the strings, and the music that filled the air seemed to speak of love in a soft and aggressive way at the same time. It was the soundtrack to the dilemma I was living, where the lyrics in my mind echoed. "What are you doing, Rachel?" As the night progressed, the sound of the guitar merged with the conversation that floated between us, and I could feel that we were traveling to a place where only the two of us existed. Furtive glances became our silent game, and it was in this intimate setting that our fingers touched. A simple movement, an accidental touch, but the warmth that flowed from it was enough to make my heart race. And at a decisive moment, Joseph stopped and looked directly into my eyes. The intensity of that gaze made my body shrink in a mixture of anxiety and desire. He leaned closer, and our faces were mere centimeters apart. I felt his breathing, a mixture of excitement and anticipation, and a part of me whispered that there was no turning back. "Rachel," he began, his voice almost a whisper, as soft as the music that was playing. "You're an incredible person, and I feel something special for you." The world around us disappeared. Only the two of us existed. And in that second, the rational part of me, the part that reminded me of Isaac and the life we had built together, fell silent in the face of the desire burning inside me. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I absorbed every second of that closeness, the smell of him, the warmth of his body, the beating of my heart. The tension was almost physical, and I couldn't resist. My lips approached his, an almost involuntary movement, but at the same time one I wanted. The kiss we exchanged burned with a fiery passion, like fire in a dry forest. In that instant, I realized that I had crossed an irreversible line. It was as if the world had disappeared around us, and only this intense connection served as our refuge from reality. Our lips met with the softness of a rose petal, but soon an anxious fire took over, making it clear that this wasn't just an innocent kiss. I was transgressing not only the rules of my marriage, but also the barriers I myself had put up to my desire. I lost track of time as we indulged in that moment, and the outside world seemed to dissolve. As soon as we pulled away, the warmth of the connection still hung in the air, and reality began to hit me like a bucket of ice water. What had I just done? Guilt began to rise up in me like a flight of tiles. The image of Isaac appeared in my mind, the effort and love he had put into our relationship. How could I look at him after that? I knew I had wreaked havoc on something that was supposed to be sacred. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, although I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. The apology was not only directed at Joseph, but also at myself for letting myself get carried away by this new and intoxicating reality. "No, Rachel, you don't have to apologize," Joseph replied, his voice soft and understanding. "It was an incredible moment, and I don't regret it." The look in his eyes said what words couldn't express. There was a mixture of desire and vulnerability, as if he too was fighting a whirlwind of emotions. But the truth was that I didn't know how to deal with it all. The night seemed perfectly magical under the starry sky, but reality was creeping back into my mind. I put my hand to my face, trying to organize the thoughts that were swirling around in my head like a hurricane. Joseph's music now sounded distant, blotted out by the emotional urgency that overwhelmed me. "I can't do this," I said, trying to find clarity amid the confusion. "I love my husband. I should be with him now." Joseph took a step back, respecting the space I needed to process what had just happened. "I understand," he said calmly, "but what you feel for me is real. You deserve to be happy, Rachel." These words echoed in me like a drum, resonating in every corner of my being. It was the truth that I had avoided acknowledging. The passion that had arisen between us wasn't just a momentary whim, it was a flame that burned brightly and that I didn't know how to extinguish. Even now, as I walked away, my heart seemed pulled in opposite directions, towards Joseph, who was becoming an essential part of who I was at this moment, and towards Isaac, who trusted me so deeply. With a heavy heart, I decided I needed to leave. I got up with the certainty that I would need time to think, to breathe, and to process everything that was happening. Every step I took towards Joseph's garden door weighed heavily on my conscience. Suddenly, everything seemed so intense and confusing. The air was charged with emotions, burning like the heat of a fire about to consume everything around it. "Rachel," Joseph called out as I pulled away, and his soft tone made me hesitate. I knew he wanted more, that he wanted me to stay in that enchanted world we were beginning to create together. And in an instant, he pulled me into the garage and we started kissing nonstop. And in less than 10 seconds, we were already fulfilling all our hidden desires. It was a moment of pure adrenaline. I went back to the house thinking only of Joseph. My husband tried to talk to me, but the words made no difference to me. That night, I went to bed with my thoughts on fire. As I looked out of the window, the sky was full of blinking stars, as was my gaze lost in the darkness, reflecting on everything I had put at risk. With my body exhausted and my mind racing, I finally slept. It's not over yet. Click on the cards and continue with us.